Hey, Aya, how are you?
Good. How about you? Oh, it's a bloody day, isn't it? Isn't it just
Bloody
absolute?
day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's July 20th, in the afternoon here in Japan. What time is it for you, Aya?
It's 1 a.m.
1
So
a.m.
yeah,
Okay.
still just midday for me.
Midday for you. Any grape drink this time? It doesn't look like it's grape drink.
No, this is a different kind of special water. It's a rice-based special water.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Going
hmm
Asian. That's great.
hmm
Um, so I guess we got lots of things we can talk about. But I think the thing on everybody's mind, including my mind, is what's going on with the market? Are we going to see a recovery? Are we in the bear market? Is the development all stopping on Bitcoin, and it's going to be a 51% attack on the network, and that's it. Pack up and go home.
It's the
What's going?
end. Yeah, I quit.
What are your thoughts, Aya? What's going on in your developer product mind?
I don't. Whenever this happens, my first instinct is to go to Twitter, take a look at what's going on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like whatever happened today, though, was like not limited to just crypto, though. It seems like there was some volatility generally in, I think early this morning on the US side, a lot of the markets were looking pretty grim, at least at the beginning. What do you think? Is that related? What's going on?
Yeah. So look, I think it comes down to the whole idea of it's kind of all doom and gloom in terms of inflation, right? All the stimulus packages that happened globally, especially in the States, it's starting to catch up. So as I mentioned previously on this podcast before, 30% of all USD was printed last year, right? So it's kind of a whole thing that's kind of catching up to what's going on now. If you look at the CPI, so it's basically consumer index, things are going up in terms of cost. And I think the reason for that is because last year, and inflation is not bad. Inflation also means growth as well. Last year, inflation was actually below the average that we're trying to hit globally, which is around 2-3%. And I'm talking about US market in particularly. But because now things are starting to open up, things such as gas prices are going up, car prices are going up, ticket prices for airplanes are going up. So there's kind of a lot of pent up demand for these kind of things. And all coming at one time, which is driving up the prices of just consumer goods. And CPI is measured by many different kind of things. Things are basically governed by the people, such as the pricing of used cars, for example. And then things are kind of more governed by the government, such as housing prices, because interest rate affects loan, and loan affects obviously housing prices as well. So it's really a huge combination of many things I think that's happening. And in terms of forward thinking, stock markets are forward thinking. They're not thinking about the now. So it's great that the stock market, the results for a lot of companies were great. It's been really, really good. But the problem is that the market is forward thinking. So actually, lots of great results came out. The market slumped. Why is that? Because with increased inflation, there's also going to be increase in terms of borrowing rate from the banks. And because of that, people are thinking, these companies cannot keep on growing because they take advantage of cheap money.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, even though the results were great on the stock market in terms of earnings calls, the stock market is red, ironically. And there's a big rant there. Does that make sense? This is my perspective on things.
Is there something special about today that made it like really just kind of accelerate downwards, or is it just sort of the randomness, the entropy of the universe chose today to make it?
I think we've been in this crypto market, been kind of moving sideways down for quite some time, right? I mean, I guess a little more sideways down, but it's not like we have a 20% up or down, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see anything, but there's a lot of kind of scrutiny recently with crypto in general.
Right. And, the China bans and whatnot. For sure.
the idea of like trying to regulate stable coins and how that's going to compete with the central bank digital currencies. A lot of negative news recently, I feel. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that, Aya?
I don't know. I mean, like, I still people are still kind of talking about the like environmental impact of crypto, and I still don't quite buy that argument. I mean, I think this argument is being utilized as a way to kind of draw criticism to cryptocurrency in general, but I just don't think I have doubts of its validity, I guess. I mean, it's nice that we now have a kind of way of measuring what is the environmental impact. It's possible. And so that's why, of course, it's very easy to pick at. Whereas if you're looking at other kinds of systems, it's just like, so, how do you measure the environmental impact of Visa? If I ask you to do that, you would have to think of a whole bunch of different factors to look at. Whereas if you did it, with crypto, you could look at just a couple set of numbers, and then you could do the math.
Right.
So, I mean, like, yeah, I don't know. As you know, I'm not super into like the trading side of things, but on like the more tech side, I don't buy this argument against against it from an environmental perspective.
I've never heard so much concentration on the idea of just general investments, and the investment should be green. Like I've heard that concept before, but I never knew that actually money cared about greenness. I thought
they don't. I mean, like in most of the time, no one does. But I think it was a convenient argument to make.
Yeah. Interesting. So actually, last week we touched a little bit on about central bank digital currencies. I want to take your thoughts on this, Aya. Like, do you think it's going to revolutionize how we can transact money? Do you think that it's going to be a competition to, for example, the current cryptocurrencies that we have out there? It's going to be competition for the stable coins. What are your general thoughts on the central bank digital currencies?
Right. I mean, we've seen some more news about this, I think, in the past week as well, right? I think there was another, maybe last week, there was another announcement that related to like one of the proof of concept plans that the US is working on. I think there are a couple more countries that were doing that. I'm not completely against it, but I think that it's sort of a futile attempt in a sense. I mean, when the cat's already out of the bag, so you can't really like try and contain it. Is there a use case for it? Sure. I think the digital dollar was in the works already, right? Like that's already been talked about even before Bitcoin was a thing. So the natural, assumption is, well, we have this blockchain stuff. We can just apply that and it'll work, right? So, I mean, it will be used just as the next natural progression of the original digital dollar discussion. I think it's probably I think we've hinted at before, but a way for the government to kind of curb the excitement towards like other cryptocurrencies. But I think, I don't know, I think they can and they probably will coexist. And I think it's very hard to try and force the world into using your own digital dollar only. Bitcoin's already, it's happened. It can't be undone.
Yeah, you can't see it. You can't exist in its own little virtual way.
Right.
Look, I agree with you. And still, it doesn't it's really interesting that Papa Powell, in the States, is saying that because we have the digital dollar in the works, we don't need cryptocurrencies anymore. That's like saying we have the dollar now, we don't need gold. We don't need platinum. We don't need commodities anymore. They don't operate the same way, right?
Right.
Really has changed from the whole idea of from a payment system to a store of value, the idea of store of value to the idea of financial freedom in terms of not being able to transfer value whenever you want to, based on and very little fees, essentially, right? So it's changed a lot of things, but like the whole idea of saying that because of a dollar, you don't need cryptocurrencies is like saying you have a dollar, you don't need gold anymore. I think that rhetoric is very interesting, and that's being pushed from the highest, government, I guess, organizations, which is really interesting.
Sure. I mean, just to play devil's advocate, though, like I see the way the criticism where it's like, for most of us, or if you live in like North America or I know many of the, I would say like more advanced nations in terms of like economic development, um, Bitcoin doesn't offer so much for you. Maybe it offers an investment opportunity. If you're very finance and like economic savvy, it offers you a hedge against inflation. But some of the more like revolutionary things that it stands to offer, let's say like sovereignty for those who don't have control of their finances. There are countries where women aren't allowed to control their own finances.
Yeah.
There are, different like other, there's many different kinds of demographics that have so much to gain from it. And so saying, well, if you already have the digital dollar, you should be happy. In a way, like that's kind of right. Like there's not really so much that you're getting out of this. And like, a lot of the things that we want to do that, are sold all the time as a benefit of Bitcoin, like cashless payment. Well, guess what? You can do cashless payment without Bitcoin. That's totally true and a valid thing to say. So I think while I'm not totally on the government side with that statement, but I think it is a good reminder to kind of look at, I don't know, how much do you really stand to benefit from it in your position of, whatever privileges that you have.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. But I think the question about the whole digital dollar is the friction of being able to transfer value. Like I have experiences myself with not that much money, right? And you have experience yourself just transferring from bank to bank, especially overseas. It's really difficult, and I just don't see it being any easier. So my question is, with the digital dollar, the idea is to take the friction out of it. I'm guessing everything needs to go through another round of KYC. Maybe the one round we don't need to do it over and over and over again, because essentially the ledger will be one versus multiple banks talking to each other, needing kind of different kind of KYC standards and things like that. But I'm really curious to see that friction is going to be completely gone. Versus Bitcoin is frictionless, right? We have to pay a fee, wait a bit of time, but I can send it from one place to another. And it's a relatively simple process. And the value is one thing, but another thing is the fact I can transfer it on a secure network without needing anything in the middle. I think that brings in value, even me personally, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. I mean, like even if nothing else, Bitcoin definitely has like this ability of forcing the hand of change to happen, right? So at least it will disrupt our expectations of how we can transfer money between countries or between bank accounts. If we all become heavy Bitcoin users, then banks will be forced to, change how they do things to at least match those like experience expectations, right? So if the problem is friction, maybe friction will go away. So then we have to figure out, okay, in that case, let's really understand what are the other parts of Bitcoin that can do so much for us beyond just, making bank transfers easier. And I think there is a lot more, right?
Yeah. I think we can talk about this for the next hour or so. But want to kind of get your idea in terms of where do you think the roles of banks will be after the central bank digital currency comes out? Because right now, there is multiple layers in terms of transferring money. We just don't see it. There's a transaction layer. There's a clearing layer where the different kind of counterparties, machines, and or banks kind of talk to each other, and there's actually a settlement in itself. And we see it as kind of something much more quicker. Obviously, sometimes overseas it takes time, but essentially it's all those layers that needs to go through. Swift code essentially is a way for banks to talk to each other, right, onto a system that's seen as very secure. What do you think the role of kind of banks and money transmitters once the central bank digital currency does go live from that perspective?
Right. Yeah, no, good question. I think the things that a bank can do or is expected to do will slowly move outside of the grasp of what banks are actually doing, and will become things that other companies and business models are doing. I kind of like to think about like You know how maybe this is a weird example, but Starbucks, I think their mission statement is like to be the third space. It means like your first space is where you exist at home, and your second space is you exist at work. And like there's this kind of big two institutions of where you should be, living and spending your time. And Starbucks wants to be the third space, so they want to basically like make this middle area where like you can do kind of relaxing at
Sure.
Starbucks, but you can also get work done, right? People
Sure.
don't go to Starbucks to just have a coffee. They sit there for hours and hours and hours and end to use the Wi-Fi, but that's part of Starbucks' model, and they accept that. So I think that Bitcoin is kind of like the Starbucks in that sense. Like they're kind of forcing this like, or I'm not sure if they're Starbucks or who's Starbucks in this case, but what's changing is like what banks, what they used to be, let's say the second space of finance. There's going to be like this middle thing that exists now where it's like people who do bank-like things, companies that do bank-like things, what activities and services that only banks could provide, that will no longer be true. So I think that's I think how their role will transform.
Interesting. So it'd be equivalent of a questionable expensive coffee. That's what you're saying.
Could be, but definitely like this blurred lines as to what we expect out of banks, I think will become absolutely true. Yeah,
I think I think definitely have more expectation on banks rather than just banks in itself.
mm-hmm.
So the idea of being more towards something like an Apple Pay, right? Just a kind of a lifestyle, kind of you mentioned it to that. Maybe banks were to be able to go through, connect with multiple merchants and things like that, and becomes a kind of a multiple payment system that's kind of able to transfer wealth from one merchant to another based on our own demands and needs in a lot less friction way. So it becomes more of a lifestyle rather than like I go to a bank for bank stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I go to my apps for non-bank stuff or something
right.
more.
And that has changed so much now already, right?
Yeah, it has. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Just switching topic a little bit, on top of regulations, there's a lot of scrutiny recently on not only stable coins, but also exchanges that are kind of falling out of multiple jurisdictions. So the exchange I'm talking about starts with the B and then ends with the E, Binance. What are your take on that, and what does it mean in terms of the evolution and revolution of decentralized exchanges?
Yeah, it's hard to comment without making a pretty spicy statement, but
do it. Just do it.
Well, I mean, I think we've been doing like exchanges for crypto have been around for, I guess, I mean, you could say only in the past, I guess 6 years is like where it was really a thing, but there were of course ones earlier than that, like 10 years ago, but like, more like, very simplified systems, but there's still like the growing pains of like, in all respects, security is one of them. And, it's a big one. And I agree that there needs to be some kind of way of protecting consumers that are using exchanges, making sure that they're actually doing things like, dotting their I's, crossing their T's, making sure that they have the reserves that they say that they do, that they're operating properly. They don't do stuff like wash trading and whatnot. So I think like that's important. And then that there needs to be a sort of a maturity that needs to happen across different markets. And I think a lot of exchanges are doing very well, and they're paying attention to how to do that carefully. That said, all these regulators are trying to apply these like super old or like other rules that are from traditional finance that just don't fit. Like it's like, you're trying to put square pegs through round holes. You're trying to get them to conform to certain kinds of regulations or standards, and that's very hard to do, right? So then there's kind of this growing pains on the regulators' side, right, where they have to have people who are lobbying or people who are helping to make those regulations. They need to understand how stuff works, and they need to have a reasonable understanding of crypto as well. So there's kind of a bit of a mismatch there, and so I think unfortunately sometimes you see businesses either get caught on the side of things where they do something wrong and they get their effed up, or they did things what they thought to be correct and then they get penalized a little bit more than they need to.
Yeah, I think I feel the scrutinizing of exchanges and things like that. Everything is very questionable. But essentially, any government, they like the idea of being able to have some kind of control of something that falls into the users within the jurisdiction, right?
Right.
Binance is obviously one of those places that they're very good at being, how do I say, you don't know where they're at. You don't know where they're at.
Yeah.
Trying to find details. You can spend 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes on the internet. You can't find exactly where they are, how they are, being governed.
Right. Accountability is, it's difficult. Well, but like you said, DEXs, that kind of changes things as well too, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's I think what gets regulators very pissed off, right? Is it more and more options? The problem is DEXs is still not so easy to use for a lot of people, right?
Sure.
Some time to get up to and running on that. But I think one thing that they should regulate, and I don't think it's good for any market, to be honest with you, is idea of be able to bet on borrow money. So essentially leveraging. Idea, I think shorting is not good either. Essentially, you can have a limited downside as well with shorting. And I think the problem with these kind of borrow money leverages becomes it becomes bigger. The market becomes huge, right? People are betting on bets, and it becomes huge, and the underlying is much, much smaller than what it is.
Yeah.
But once the underlying moves either way, all these people get unwrapped, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is detrimental to the market in terms of sustainable growth, as well as the protection of the people. So if anything, and maybe in Japan they already started to clamp down quite some time on leverage trading quite some time, but I think that's probably what they should look at instead of regulating on KYC. Because to be honest with you, I think all the exchanges are very good on that. And then you have a company like Bassets or Chain Analysis that are doing a lot of background in terms of analysis on where money is going and can stop money laundering and things like that. I think that's quite good already. But more than anything is how are people trading in a way that they're not betting their life savings on something, right?
Yeah.
That's the issue with Robinhood as well.
With DEXs, or not DEXs, just DEXs, but like DeFi in general has been very much friendly to the idea of trading or services based on borrowed funds, and it really accelerated the growth of DeFi in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's been an unhealthy development?
I don't think it's an healthy development, but I think the way it's marketed is not good, right? Because people start to get blinded by the idea of double-digit, if not triple-digit growth on a very short-term basis. When they stop looking at the underlying in terms of what they're putting money into, and it becomes to a certain extent kind of like a meme stock, right? People are buying into the hype versus doing their homework on even just a little bit of homework in terms of what they're putting money into. So, and I think it's gambling. And then the growth of how many DeFi projects out there, it's hard to say how much of it is a cash grab versus not a cash grab, right? So I think the short of it is I think it's good that it's come out, but I think the speed of how it's coming out is not great, especially for new guys, I think.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully going back to accountability for a second, but at least I guess one of the interesting things, right, is how that changes so much with DEXs in particular, because the kind of due diligence that you do now is less about do you have a clean desk, clean monitor policy, and instead of that, it's more like, okay, let's scrutinize and make sure that we have audited the smart contracts that this entire system behaves on. We see all the time different DeFi services and DEXs sometimes lose significant amount of funds because of some sort of exploit. So you're right, it's kind of a weird balance and kind of again a growing pain of how do we get users, how do we get the people that are running the services, how do we get regulators to all start to mature together without things falling apart. Yeah.
So again, I think it's great in terms of where it's developed the idea that DeFi obviously is really, really important. I think it's going to be the future of investing as well. But I really do wish people would start with Bitcoin first, understand that, and before moving on to something else. So
What
yeah.
about like 10, let's say like 20 years from now? Are people still, do you think people will still be having that they should still learn Bitcoin first?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's an assumption that Bitcoin is still king 20 years from now, or at least is like the fundamental granddaddy of how crypto should work.
I hope so. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely excels and is good at certain things. So you're right. Like I think if you're looking at it from a perspective of like, how do we build a system that's meant to be battle tested, very conservative in terms of change, respectively. But sure, yes. I think the Ethereum community is absolutely wonderful, and they're super. They're risk takers, and they like to build new things and develop rapidly at sometimes at the expense of safety, but that has its place too. So I think we'll see both. We'll see both of these systems will probably be around for quite a while.
Yeah, and I think it's more about less about the system itself, but kind of the community kind of rallying behind it. Now, at one point where I see Bitcoin addresses start to decrease by a significant amount, mining power is decreasing and adjusting is becoming easier and easier. The network is becoming weaker. The people on crypto Twitter is just flopping off. Then that's the point I said, you know what? This is no longer king, and then we have to think about the longevity of something like Bitcoin. But the fact is, wallet addresses are increasing exponentially. Even with the price decrease, on-chain analysis shows that big wallets are still accumulating very heavily. And then Google searches, and it's up and down, but it, generally speaking, has increased throughout the many years. So I think there's still a long way to go from here. The question is, when do we start tapering off? But when we do taper off, I think significant moves in the market of like 0.5% to be like, oh, the sky is falling kind of thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's what happens now with like the yen versus US dollar, right? Is like it just moves way less than 1%, and everyone's like crying in the streets. So
yeah, exactly. And same thing with gold as well. Oh, it's gone up 0.4% yesterday. Oh my gosh, inflation must be crazy, right? So yeah, we'll see. So I don't see that yet. So I definitely see that it would be here for a long time. Same thing, Ethereum network is fantastic in terms of the community behind it. Is there another smart contracty like platform out there that has a community of Ethereum? You can kind of say maybe Cardano to a certain extent, but they don't have smart contracts yet. It's still up to debate, right? So I think technology is one thing, but the community behind it is just as important, if not more important, because that's shows adoptions and shows strength in the network itself as well. Yeah. Cool. Long rant. So I guess we're coming up with the 30-minute mark. So looking to close things off. But do you have anything to tell the audience? I think everybody is thinking about where the price is going next. Any advice? Any thoughts? Any words of wisdom? 10x your money, or just keep a little ahead?
Double down. Don't double down. Only play with what you can stand to lose. And also, if you're feeling really sad about the price going down, maybe take a minute to ask yourself why you bought into Bitcoin in the first place. Hard questions.
Those are very hard questions.
Yes.
Very hard questions. That's great. I should be following your advice this week. And don't look at prices all the time. My friend always pings me about prices. Whenever I see a message from him, I'm like, oh, the price has gone down. So I don't look at it, right? Don't look at it. Keep a little ahead. Yeah.
Just do the, you do the thing where it's like, if it's going up, you can brag about, how much the sick gains you've been making. And when it goes down, you just say, I'm just in it for the tech.
That's right. Yeah, that's what it is. Cool. That's what I'm going to do this week. That's what I'm gonna do this week. I'm in for a tech. We're in for a tech day this week.
Of course we are. We are. I'm in it for the tech. Up and down.
Cool. Thank you for your time, Aya. Now
it's likewise.
1:30. Appreciate
Yes.
your time. And we will close it off. Thank you everyone for watching the show. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and see you next week.
Yep. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.